Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Cilinix Crypto, and welcome to this new video, your middle of the day market update about crypto. We'll talk about Bitcoin, XRP, SUI. All right, we had a massive hack today, which it's still in progress right now. What's going on? Hopefully, they'll be able to recover some funds, but we don't know. We'll talk about what effect that has on SUI, which so far has pulled down or has pulled back, but ultimately is still holding. So we'll talk about that and then some other altcoins. There's quite a lot of altcoin opportunities coming up. First of all, the title and the thumbnail might be quite dramatic, right? I don't think that there's anything to worry about. I think on the higher time frames we have confirmed a breakout. And I do think that breakout will hold, and I do think that Bitcoin, at least on the short term, will remain bullish. However, I do think you need to be realistic as well. Take a look at the volume we've had this morning, but also the volume decreases we've had with the moves up, and that you should be ready for a move down, right? A pullback, and that you should be afraid of FOMOing into positions for other reasons as well. But we'll get to that a little bit later. First of all, let's talk a little bit more about the fundamentals. Today we actually have some news. We had initial jobless claims and continuing jobless claims. Mixed data doesn't really matter for the markets, or at least it's a very mixed data. But this data hasn't really affected the markets in a long while. But the PMI is coming in about 30 minutes, so that's at 3:45. UTC plus 1, that does matter, right? And then we have existing home sales a little bit later at 4 p.m. UTC plus 1, that doesn't matter as much, but it's still interesting to keep an eye on that, just to get a grip of what the US economy is doing. But PMI is important. In general, we are looking for lower than expected data for a bullish reaction across the financial markets, right? So that includes Bitcoin, includes the S&P 500 as well, which so far has pulled back a little bit lower over the course of today, but has also bounced back up. However, if you take a look at the SPX, right, so the US equities, first of all, that's trading, it's actually trading a little bit higher, I think, but there's still this gap to the downside, right? So that is one of the main things that I would be cautious for. We see a Bitcoin that's quite over leveraged, right? So the leverage is quite high right here, even though the funding rates are still fine, but you can see that right here. While the volume became lower and lower when we tried to move up, which is a bit of a sign of the top being reached, or at least the local top being reached. We could have the perfect mix of leveraged long positions unwinding for Bitcoin and the S&P 500 pulling back, in which case we can drop down pretty hard, right? So that is the main thing you should be cautious about regarding Bitcoin. Like I said, on the higher time frames, I think we're bullish, all right? I think we had a good breakout with a lot of volume. And I think that breakout will ultimately hold, and I think we're going to look for prices higher to find some balance right there. But on the short term, Bitcoin pulling back with the levels where the Bitcoin dominance is at, could be, Bitcoin will probably be fine, but altcoins can pull back quite a bit. And then if you take a look at others, if you take a look at the total 3, right? So these are indexes of the total market cap for altcoins, mostly. Those are both at resistance as well, right? So therefore, I would be careful. I would be careful with buying into altcoins right now. There's definitely pockets of momentum, pockets of liquidity. I would not hesitate too much to trade that. If something is uncorrelated to Bitcoin and it looks good, I would still buy. I would still keep a long bias, but overall in the markets, I would be slightly cautious because of the equities that have that gap to the downside and have pulled back a little bit, because of Bitcoin and its recent price action, and because of how these altcoin indices look right now and where they are in relation to its main resistance. That is the main thing I think you need to be cautious for, but I'm not telling you that the market is going to turn bearish, all right? And I still think that a long bias is the best bias to have, although that doesn't mean that you should just buy anything right now. So those are my thoughts on the markets, and some important levels I'm keeping an eye on are 107,500, where we have a naked POC, 7-day rolling VWAP at 106,100, and a 200 EMA at 105,500. That's so a lot of the major support levels are also a fair bit lower. And it seems like the market is also getting a little bit more correlated, but that's too early to say, I'd say. All right, but talking about some altcoins here. First of all, XRP, we're looking for a breakout above 2.44, 2.45. I still think that breakout is coming, but for now, in line with what I expect from Bitcoin, a pullback seems a little bit more likely than to get the breakout, even though the open interest and the volume is looking better, right? So ultimately, you know, it's better to be on the lookout for the breakout than to short XRP right now. That's definitely not something I would do. SUI, with the massive hack of Cetus, has pulled down. I think the hackers actually still have some SUI coins, and that is the main risk right now. If they start selling that, we've already seen a pretty deep sell-off right here. I think we can definitely pull back lower, especially if we get that pullback from Bitcoin. But ultimately, I don't expect that SUI will drop down lower than the main support level we have right here between 3.7 going all the way down to 3.45. So is this bearish for SUI? Definitely. Short term though, I don't think it will make the structure break. That's my main takeaway of SUI right now, but you know, trading it is difficult. I mean, personally, I do have some limits open for it, but I'm very much keeping an eye on that, and I'm very much monitoring whether I still want to keep those, and it's going to be risky, all right? So be careful, but ultimately, I think SUI is going to be fine, or at least it's going to move in relation to what the market does, which is fine, all right? Most altcoins do that. And then lastly, there's quite a lot of altcoins that I quite like. So you have Tron, for example, that I think is doing quite good, and its ecosystem is also doing good. It broke out, still holding that breakout at this point of time. Bit of a volatile coin, so that is definitely something you should know. Hedera, I think, is interesting as well. Hedera broke above with the 12-hour time frame a major level right here around 20 cents. Also a coin to keep your eyes on. Fetch, or ASI, also broke above a high time frame resistance level here at 80 cents. So there's definitely opportunities. Bonk, same thing, broke above a high time frame resistance level here with quite a lot of volume. So there's definitely these opportunities for altcoins. I would be a little bit more careful with those altcoins, right? Keep an eye on the correlation, go to Orion Terminal, keep an eye on the correlation. If the correlation is below 0.5, I think you can take those trades. Otherwise, I would wait for a bit of a pullback, all right? And even if it's a shallow pullback, that's better than none. But those are my thoughts. I think that's what you need to know. So if you do have any questions, let me know down in the comments. For now, thank you for watching. Take care and bye.